Welcome to Behind the Podium, Unveiling the Coach. Problem solvers have problems too. So here at Behind the Podium, I, Jared Cohen, and my co-host Alexander Ellis discuss the struggles, philosophies, demands, and practices of the coach, or said more broadly, health and wellness practitioner. To provide quality coaching is to enhance someone's life in an everlasting and unfolding way. This is not easy and requires a lot of due diligence and self-mastery on the part of the coach to be able to perform. So without further ado, join us as we dig deeper into the depths of the coach's mind. Behind the Podium, talking about the practices, struggles, practices, and philosophies of the coach, healthcare practitioner, provider, anybody in the role of trying to provide and bring service to another individual. I am Jared Cohen. Joined with me is
Alexander Ellis.
And today we want to talk about self-care, habits, best practices, ways in which we think about and have played around and experimented with providing care for ourselves, and within that experimentation, how we want to give back and talk about techniques for yourself, and also how you can help the clients you're working with, skin the cat a little bit better in terms of how they're able to approach and find times to make this priority for themselves.
Yeah, maximize your time. For the longest time, I was that person who was like, I don't have time. I can't. There's no time. I don't have time. And I think globally, or maybe not, maybe globally, but for sure in the US with the people I run into, it's not that you don't have time or that I don't have time. It's that I was wasting my time doing other crap that I didn't like doing. And once I prioritized self-care, because I was like, hey, self, you brush your teeth every day, you wash your face every day. Why can't you stop, drop, and roll for 20 minutes? Like, is that really asking too much? And so it became a priority, and then it just started happening. And once it started happening, just like when you don't brush your teeth one day, and it just, maybe that's just me, but like it drives me crazy all day long. The same thing has now evolved with my self-care, that if it doesn't happen, as far as rolling in the morning, there's other ways that I approach self-care, but as far as that goes, it's now a habit.
Do you habitualize your rolling? And when we're talking about rolling, we're talking about rolling with yoga tune-up therapy balls.
Yep, only yoga tune-up balls. I've tried others. They're no bueno.
When you prioritize your rolling, is that a priority that is time-bound?
Yes, I set a timer for about 20 minutes. And in that 20-minute period, my jaw for me is the number one priority because I spend so much of my day talking or on the computer. So talking and the jaw going yippity yap all day, and then poor positioning. Because we all slouch. So TMJ, jaw pain, tension headaches. I used to get tension headaches regularly, and all I would do was like, I'll just roll my neck and, take an Advil or something. But when I made rolling out my jaw muscles a priority, I don't get headaches anymore. Like, I'm not playing catch up all the time. Like, I'm at the front of the curve. It also, when you think of other benefits of self-care, in the morning, which is when I spend my 20 minutes, I watch the news. I'm like super multitasking. So I watch the news, I roll, and it's the only time of day that my cat is like really affectionate. So that's also like our special time together. So Mr. Kitty and I cuddle while we roll and watch the news.
Well, I am all about multitasking when it comes to self-care. And that's my number one way in which I advise others to begin integrating and incorporating self-care into their daily lives, especially when we're talking about self-massage.
Mm-hmm.
And to lower that barrier of entry, from the otherwise, like, hey, can you make 20 minutes? Can you, just like, hey, what are you? We're on our phones all the time, right? Like the Courgeous Ball is a great example for abdominal massage,
Hmm.
in which I'm going to lay on the Courgeous Ball while I do some emails on the
Yeah,
phone, right?
totally.
Or if I am, watching TV, there's an opportunity. If I'm even brushing my teeth, there's an opportunity where I could be rolling my feet. Or something I've experimented with is sitting in the bottom of the squat while I brush my teeth.
I balance on one foot.
Hey, nice.
Yes, yes, yes,
Yes, yeah.
yes.
So like, just all these ways of like, I think we talked about this a few episodes ago when we did mention self care. I think in the episode, how well do you practice what you preach? This idea of self care really it's contextualized within how present are you with the moment.
Hmm.
This practice of mindfulness and being able to, like brush your teeth on one foot is really bringing you to that moment that, otherwise, like, it's the brain at work in which we're brushing our teeth and we're thinking about so many different things. And
Totally.
even, that act of standing on one foot becomes its own multitask, just in the fact that not only are you working on some good kinesthetic awareness and proprioception, but hey, you are, practicing mindfulness in this time that you have to achieve the stability demands of being on one foot. And
Hmm.
you've done that without having to put that on your to-do list,
Right. I don't have
which
to have
I
my
think is
workout clothes
empowering.
on
Yeah, right.
and my yoga mat out. Um, I'm sure I'm just like trying to think about how to say this, but I get weird in public. Like, I'll just drop into a squat or I'll put my foot up and, get a hip stretch or do whatever. Because these opportunities to squeeze in little extra movements that you're not getting when you're sitting at your desk or behind the wheel of your car or doing whatever it is around the house, the opportunities are all there. It's just that we don't necessarily take advantage of them. But you kind of have to like not be worried about what people are going to think.
Yeah,
You know?
I totally subscribe to that, and it is something that I think in another way of this multitasking, growing yourself and your self confidence in just
Hmm.
uncomfortable circumstances, like that. Um, like, I am that guy, and my favorite is that I really bring this to bear. Like, I was warming up my CrossFit class the other day, and they all joked like, we just imagine you at home like stretching all the time, and like part of that is really true, and just like, I am that guy that if I'm going to the DMV and there's all those chairs out as you're like waiting for your number to be called, like, I am going to be that guy that is like doing the couch stretch against the chair there. Um, and over time, like, I've gotten more. There are some things like that you can do more subtly.
Yeah.
Like that couch stretch actually can be done pretty subtly versus um, I've really sort of like let my guard down more now at airports, like
Oh
in
yeah.
the terminal, where like I'm totally dropping into the Cossack squat, and I've got the jump stretch band tied around,
Oh
like
wow.
usually like one of the metal sort
Chair
of
legs or
chair
something.
legs, yeah, something to that
Yeah.
effect.
Well, I am
Always
traveling
looking.
too light then if I'm not bringing my jump stretch band.
Yeah, the jump stretch band is always an easy one to have on hand. Um, Even like when I go out to eat, I like to get the bar stool if there's a place, so that I can basically like set up in pigeon, right,
Right.
on the bar stool, and then I can have one leg on the ground, and there I have the other hip just like actively in hip extension,
Right.
to stabilize. So, um,
So
but
you're weird in public too.
yeah, I'm super weird, and like I said, like it's a continually like growing thing where like um I almost feel like I have to sometimes like pass judgment on others just to like provide enough kind of like buffer for my own insecurities about like what other people are thinking, like, and that's like its own like growing process of like, as opposed to being like, oh, like they suck. It's like, no, they're working at the limits of their understanding. They don't know what they don't know. But then again, like there are many people that do know and choose not to partake in the way that we are. But I really hold myself to that standard that, like you said, I'm going to squeeze it in when I can. And that practice of squeezing it in when you can, I think is so important. And it's so important to be a part of, to show others that like you can squeeze it in too. When I was recently in Israel on a birthright trip, and we would have like, we're walking around all this sightseeing, and then we'd get to a particular spot where we're like stopping, and then we listen to someone talk for like 20 minutes, and I am like all over the place. Right? Like I had the voodoo floss that I was just like using to do pass-throughs with, and like, if there's a little, and everybody is just like, what is with this guy? Like, I even got in trouble. Like this is like another thing. Like it gets into this whole kind of cultural thing where
they're like this damn American.
Well, we went to this cemetery, and we were like, and a funeral was beginning that we were watching, and for me, like these like positions are positions that like I adopt so frequently now that like that's just part of me, and that's like how I can best engage in what's going on. Like if I'm just kind of sitting, like I get really zoned out, and I also get like more unpresent. I start thinking about like, oh, my hips, and like, so I was like, we were kind of watching from afar, and I was essentially like I think there was like a little bench that I just had my foot on top of, and I'm just kind of like weaving in and out of my hip, and one of the Israelis came up and was like, Jared, like this is not okay. Like you can't be like stretching right now, like, and so like, I can understand like the context if it's just being seen, like, can this guy like not, like he's not observing like this like very, mourning type of event. But it, for me, it's like, I'm like totally present right now. Like, and I'm like totally feeling everything that's going on. It's just like, this is how I have to,
you're that kid who fidgeted all the time, huh?
I think so.
I think so.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting to go like to think back to now, like if I had like, and these are like my tools now, that like I understand how to productively fidget. Like I know where to put my foot. Like I didn't know. I remember it was at Seal Fit in 2011, and it was like Mark Devine that like showed me pigeon pose. Like that was my first like exposure to like, externally rotate and like abduct the hip and put that leg in front, and like and it was like, wow, this feels so good. and like to think that like, wow, I lived 11 years before, or more than that.
I think hopefully a little older.
2011. Like I lived 21 years before like getting to know how to like, put my hip in this position and, sit this way. Like now that's, part of the arsenal, and is a reliable piece about how I'm not only going to fix myself, but more importantly, I'm going to maintain myself. And I'm going to maintain myself so that I can be the best coach, that I can give back. And through that giving back is me talking about my own experience and my own trials and tribulations with the tinkering that goes along with figuring out how to essentially hack some of the situations that otherwise seem unhackable or just a little bit unfulfilled.
Yeah. I was thinking as you were talking about, squeezing stuff in all the time, if we think of movement like Katie Bowman does, and she calls it nutritious movement, and if you think of it from a nutrition standpoint, the one salad that you have on Saturday morning at 9 a.m. doesn't discount the 400 Snicker bars you had all week long.
Yeah.
That We have to make healthier decisions and choices about how we're moving our bodies and what positions we're trying to get into and just like what we're doing all the time, instead of just thinking that your 30 minutes of exercise a day or even your 60 minutes of exercise a day is going to counteract and erase all the sitting. It's not. So that's where, different positions. And one of the reasons I know you're sitting on a flat surface, I'm sitting on the floor, is that you have to keep moving. And the two of us, we keep moving and readjusting. But that's the beauty of sitting on the floor, is that it does get uncomfortable.
Right.
And so you then experiment and figure out different ways to make it more or less comfortable depending on what you're looking after. Just do different stuff.
Yeah, and I liked, how you said, standing on one foot, you don't need to be wearing your workout pants, and that idea that, it's this integrated life. I'm always I should always be able to move and express and kind of change my relationship to space that doesn't require me, in my workout shorts and my workout, shirt.
Your hair in a ponytail.
Yeah, and I really and I like seeing where some of the apparel and the clothing has sort of shifted to address that. Whether it's more of even minimal dress shoes or
yoga pants that are styled as dress pants so you can wear them to work.
Exactly.
Hallelujah.
If those of you that don't know, checking out Outlier clothing is I have Outlier pants that I wear all the time, and they are my sort of casual and going out nice pants, and I can drop into a squat in those things. It's nobody's business. Yeah, and just that feeling again of not being restricted, and reinforcing this idea that hey, this is part of me. This is what I have evolved to do and interact with the world in this way, and I don't need to think about categories of time in which that is happening in and of itself in lieu of the other day-to-day stimuli and commitments, engagements.
Totally. And I think too, the reason why I do all of this work and all the stretching or the strengthening or the self-care, the rolling, is not so I can do any one specific thing better, but so I can do everything better.
Yeah.
And for my clients too, it's they say, oh, after a session, I feel so great right now. And I'm like, imagine if you did this every day. You could feel this great every day. You have the tools to do it. Just do it. But that just do it aspect, that just getting over the first hurdle, the first little bump is the hardest part. But once you've taken a step in the right direction, it's so much easier just to make all this stuff, this positive movement, a part of your just daily vernacular.
Daily vernacular. I like it. Here, I just pulled out Practical Ethics for Psychologists, A Positive Approach by Samuel J. Knapp and Leon D. Van de Kreek. This is one of my books for my master's in sports psychology courses, and there is a whole chapter on this chapter is titled Competence, and one of the big pieces within competence, particularly emotional competence, is self-care. So here is a quote. Furthermore, from a practical perspective, psychologists who do not show sufficient concern for their own well-being risk losing or limiting their ability to help others. Psychologists need to function well themselves to help others. Improved self-knowledge may help psychologists become more effective in identifying their own emotional reactions and sensitivity to patient information. This relationship of self-care to competence is found in the aspirational section of the APA Ethics Code, which states, Psychologists strive to be aware of the possible effect of their own physical and mental health on their ability to help those with whom they work.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
It's just like on the airplane when they're giving you the pre-flight,
right.
Warnings, and they say, make sure you put your oxygen on before you help anybody else. Because if you pass out, you're of no use.
So true. So true.
But, self-care also, we've talked a lot about movement and things like that. Self-care can also just be, taking a walk with the dog without your cell phone.
Yes.
Which I do from time to time. Recently for me, because I've been just like hustling super hard, self-care is like taking the block of time to go get my hair cut. I'm so excited. So we can expand our definition of what self-care actually is. But anything that feeds you, that you like to do, that's purely for you. And being selfish is not a bad thing if it's in terms of self-care.
Yeah, I've been really trying to hone morning routines, morning rituals. This has been a good year now that I've been back and forth about trying to find some consistency around that. And what I've found most successful, and I've changed the contents a little bit in each of the pieces and how they're done, but what I've been doing is three items of practice. First thing I get up is some kind of movement routine, followed by some kind of meditation, followed by some kind of journaling. So when I started this about a year ago, I was doing, I would do like 4 minutes of movement, and I did a minute of kettlebell swings, followed by a minute of squats with the kettlebell, followed by a minute.
This is like right out of bed?
Yeah, this was right out of bed.
You're so hardcore.
And followed by a minute of push presses, followed by a minute of rows. And the idea was not that like it was going to be that intense or anything. Rather, it was just like, okay, you have a minute, just stay moving, And so sometimes with like the squat, I'd be squatting with the kettlebell. It was just like, maybe like 20, 30 seconds, I'm just staying in the bottom. Or with the push presses, I'm, getting pretty fatigued like 20, 30 seconds in. And so maybe another 20 seconds, I'm just holding it here. I've now changed that where it's not as taxing, although I did like that. And one of the things I did like about that was that it was definitely like, it was kind of like my version of a cold shower. It was a definite zap. And then it had my heart rate and had up enough where like I was out of my own head. Cause that's some of the problem too. Like sometimes I'm almost like deterred by the new day, because there's just like this daunting of like, I know there's so much to do, and then I'm like, I want to be so productive, and now I'm like, it's almost like I'm like gripping too tight that like I just, there's the only chances for that thing to like fall out of my hands. But what was nice about that was the heart rate got up, and then I would go meditate, and it was like the meditation was like a really good then sort of like counter to that of like really just trying to like calm everything down. And
you're doing like a mental sauna.
Yeah, right. And so now I've changed that a little bit where instead of doing it's not as intense, but I'll get up and do Andrea Spina's full body CARs, controlled articular rotation. So I'll go from head to spine, to scapula, to shoulder, to elbow, to wrist, to hip, to knees, to ankle, doing basically joint circles. And that's like, that essentially turns into 5 minutes.
Right.
And then I'll go into some type of meditation, and then journaling. And
have you ever tried journaling before bed? Because I was thinking of what you said about the, like, oh my God, there's so much stuff to do today. I often take out my planner, which is kind of like my planner journal all rolled into one. And for me, having everything not in the right place per se, but in a place
Mm-hmm.
that I know where it's going to be attended to and I have it all spread out. That helps me wake up the next morning knowing that I have a plan in place and ready to go and it's not so overwhelming.
Yeah, no, I like that. I think my struggle has been um, like getting to bed sometimes feels like such a rush.
Yeah.
uh, and like this has to do sometimes with like having to be up early to coach.
Mm-hmm.
That like um, sometimes it's just like I need to be in bed, like lights off, like I've almost like lost that window of time. Um, and that's also like a reflection of just like at the moment how like things are not as orderly that
Mm-hmm.
like they're that like the sort of like routine and like the window of time before bed like feels so
Yeah.
so rushed. But I have done it like in the sense of another kind of tool self-care piece that I've adopted is having whiteboards in my room.
Mm-hmm.
And I just got from CVS uh, like they're pretty small. I would tell you the dimensions, but I have like no sense of that. 8 by 11, 10. I don't know. Like
Is it
visually,
bigger than a piece of paper?
it is bigger than a piece of paper. It's probably like one. It's like um, it's like it's kind of like widescreen, sort of like it's like the size of like a little mini TV.
Okay, so we'll say like 24 inches maybe.
Yeah, 24 inches, and that is on my wall. And like they're nice because they just stick on. It's like already sticky,
Mm.
and I like I like being able to sort of like think in an upright position,
Mm-hmm.
standing, and
Mm-hmm.
just like the kind of there's something about pen and paper that also sort of
Yep.
like freaks me out a little bit,
What?
like I don't know, just kind of like I gotta write stuff, but like something
Okay,
about
well, I only write in my planner and pencil,
but something
so.
about like the sort of just act of like the whiteboard feels less permanent and just kind of like feels more like free form, like just stream of consciousness.
Hmm.
And then it's also nice because um, papers, right, like just end up taking space, particularly desk space. Like obviously you're saying you have the planner, so it's all in there, but like sticky notes around the house can get a little
Oh, yeah.
overwhelming versus like,
You can put sticky notes in your planner.
yes, you can. But anyway, so what I've been doing with that is like before I go to bed, because sometimes I'm always like sort of streaming what, especially if I'm coaching early the next morning, like what I'm gonna do in that like warm up
Yeah.
period. And so like I'll kind of go to the board and I'll just sort of like stream ideas for a couple minutes of like what that is gonna look like, and that is helpful.
That's awesome too, because in the morning, like your brain's not going to be as on fire. I feel like I get some of my best ideas at night too,
Mm.
which is why I like to do my planning, journaling stuff at night because then I can write a bunch of stuff down.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
I also have this weird, I don't know if it's a habit or like a mental block where I feel like I have to be absolutely exhausted to go to sleep.
Mm.
Which is stupid because then I'm like exhausted the next morning because I stayed up so late waiting to be super tired.
Yeah, yeah,
But, like reading a book before I go to bed. And sometimes I'll read for like 45 minutes until I like can't keep my eyes open because I know that when I go to bed, I'll just fall right asleep. I don't know.
yeah. So like almost like
I don't have the discipline that you do.
like not liking like sort of just like that those moments of like being in
No.
bed, just like waiting for sleep to
Because
come.
I can't wait. I can't turn my brain
Yeah,
off.
yeah,
Even when I've done, the output and I've written stuff down, I'm
yeah,
still like replaying conversations and I'm thinking about what I'm going to do tomorrow. I'm going to think about my class and what am I going to wear and
yeah, yeah. Totally. And that's why I like the book. I like the book as well. I think that like those are great times for fiction
Yeah.
consumption. And yeah, that's been another big piece. Like I know a lot of people like the more passive wind down routines, like watching TV, right? Or
It
like
doesn't relax me at
yeah,
all.
or like obviously now like with your phone, or like just watching videos on the phone. Like
Yeah.
I know some close to me are big fans of Instagram.
Snapchat.
Yeah, Instagram just like content for days. And
Can
what
we just talk about what a black hole going on Instagram is? Like,
yeah,
I do not pick up my phone after like 9:30 at night because I'll spend an hour on Instagram looking at stupid, cute little puppies. I'm just like, why? This is such a waste of time.
yeah, no, and that's the issue, you know, is I think like that's like sometimes an internal struggle that I fight is like I know like immediately it feels like what would be most relaxing like is like oh I'm just gonna sort of like almost like zone out and just like consume you know content and videos and you know like they're just 30-second or they're just 15-second clips like no big deal um but like yeah that like really does turn things on more
Mm-hmm.
and it's just that lack of presence whereas like having to actively engage to read or even you know listening to the audiobook where like the having to call upon imagery you know is its own I think its own best kind of activity to like just tire you out you know
Yeah.
versus you know the other more kind of passive consumption of stimuli like the other things aren't having to work as much that like you know you can just kind of stare at something like for a pretty long time sometimes much longer than you think especially when you are craving the distraction the craving distraction is so high
Mm-hmm.
that like it's like drinking a glass of water you know um, like the body's just going to continue to consume that until like it's like totally like topped out.
Maxed out. Well, also with social media stuff, there's endless rabbit holes that you can go down. And what I like about reading a book or I mean, even sometimes my planner, I can get into a rabbit hole. So that's why a book or an audio book or something like that, there's going to be an arc. There's going to be a spot where you're like, okay, I can stop here. There's like
Yeah, right.
natural stopping
Yes,
places.
natural pauses. Yeah.
Yeah. So finding something that has that natural pause as opposed, you know, stop with the phone, stop with the computer.
That's a great way to put it. Natural pause. Like
Mm-hmm.
the power of chapters.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing.
It is. They're ingenious. I mean,
Uh,
the book I'm reading now is a finance book. And I can read that before bed because I just finish a chapter and then I'm like, oh, I'm so tired. And then off to bed I go.
okay, but now see my thing is like the problem I would run into like with the finance book before bed is like that is gonna like turn the knobs like
Oh,
you
I
know like
know.
money signs and like
I
then
know. Just
like
so excited.
then I'm thinking about like, oh, like they just like totally dropped a few terms. I have no idea what those mean. Now I gotta look those up. Like, you know.
Oh, no, no, no. This is a very user-friendly book.
Okay.
It's really good. It's called Smart Couples Finish Rich by David Bach.
Huh.
And I heard him talk on Marie Forleo's show and Marie TV on YouTube. And they were talking about money and how, not, I mean, I guess, yeah, like saving and all this stuff. And he said something that really stuck with me. He's like, you know, some people are born, they walk out of the womb with a calculator in one hand and a budget in the other. They're ready to go. And that's not me at all. Like, I'm not a budget person. I can't stick to a budget. And then there's all this like negative self-talk, like, oh my God, you suck so bad because you can't stick to a budget. And what's your problem? And the way he puts it together is just so easy to understand that it finally clicked for me.
Oh, that's great.
So both you and I are at a young enough stage in our lives where we can start saving. So start saving right now. So that's what I read before bed. And then I go to bed excited about all of the dream vacations I'm going to be able to take now because I'm saving my money.
Yay! I see Marie. She's got Elizabeth Gilbert.
Marie TV is amazing. She, Elizabeth Gilbert's interview is really good. She interviews super interesting people. And then she also has shorter episodes, like 7 minutes, where, people ask a question and then she just gives like super awesome business advice. I love her like tagline. It's like the world needs a special something that only you can offer. I'm like, that's right, Marie. It doesn't matter if I'm trying to reinvent the wheel because it's me. I'm doing me.
Which is which is Elizabeth Gilbert's
Hmm.
proposal as well. That's awesome. Is this a podcast that she has too?
No, she doesn't have a podcast. It's just her YouTube show.
Yeah, and going back to multitasking, like I need the audio form so I can listen to this stuff when I am walking my dog and I'm driving.
Right. Well, with the YouTube videos, I just put it on my tablet
Uh,
and then I'll be like making
right, yeah,
breakfast or washing the dishes or something like that.
that's true.
That also, I mean, washing the dishes for me is self-care as much.
Yeah,
It kind of is and it kind of isn't. It is in that there's almost like a meditative quality and practice to washing the dishes.
totally agree.
But then also the clear space in my kitchen mentally helps me be in a clear space as well.
Yeah,
And so when there's a pile, because we don't have a dishwasher, so when there's a pile of dishes a mile high, it's just like my anxiety levels are like so much higher. So there's another non-traditional self-care.
I use the dishwasher, the dishwashing, as a metaphor for self care as well.
Mm-hmm.
That I remember having a conversation with a client where they were like, do I ever is there ever come a time where like I don't have to do this rolling stuff? And what I said was like, well, it's like doing the dishes. Like, is there ever a time where you don't have dirty dishes? No, like you
No.
use the dish and then you gotta clean it.
Yes.
But it's all about just that due diligence of like staying ahead of the curve, right? Like the longer you go without the self-care, right, the more of the
Yes.
debt that you're in, right? And
Yes.
if you can keep up with the maintenance regularly, then like it's just like doing one dish, so it's
Yeah.
little tune-ups, little tune-ups.
This is genius.
uh,
That's the best metaphor ever.
and I think like that is really speaks very clearly to like what we're going after,
Mm-hmm.
and how to make peace with the fact that like this thing is not going away, like it's not. And at first, I know a lot of people I work with, it is daunting, like
Mm-hmm.
uh, especially from the place that I'm coaching, the context that I'm coming from, in which it's like like I don't want you to do a lot of these things you want to do until we can kind of get some of this stuff under control.
Right.
And I know that's like a hard, like, trust me, that's a hard like message to deliver, like especially when people come in kind of like just wanting to do this thing, like that they've
Yep.
seen, and they don't want to, and they don't want to really think about it, um,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where they've kind of been sold a little bit of some lies,
Mm-hmm.
and what this workout routine should look like, and how it should play out. This We've talked about this being another future episode, but this concept of uh, like, where am I supposed to feel it, or like.
Yeah.
And I was working with someone recently. I did a personal session with them, and then uh, and the next day I saw them, and I'm like, so how are you feeling? And just that question was like, what do you mean, like how does your shoulder feel, like, oh, I don't know, how's it supposed to feel, like. And
Tell me.
it's just like, wait, what, like, I don't understand what's happening, like. And just another reminder of like how like people are so removed from it,
Mm-hmm.
um, and even today I was coaching someone. They were doing their jump roping, and after it I was like, hey, we got to work on this, like, you're totally overextended every time you jump. And then just even put them on the ground and had them try and get in the hollow body position, and they could not, like, after moving the hips out of 90 degrees, like their low back immediately lost contact with the ground, like lumbar curve
Interesting.
just totally
Yeah.
gone. And they like immediately got that. And then I had them go back and sort of like fix it up, and it was like totally different. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, do you feel the difference? And they're like, yeah, like, it's like, it's like I have to really like once I really focus on it, then I don't really feel strain in my back. And it was like,
Mm.
okay, like
Yeah,
it's
wouldn't
like
you like to not
it was
have
just
back
like it
pain?
was so simple too the way they put it. It's like, yeah, once I really focus on it, and but again, just that like very explicit reminder of how like most of the time I'm not focusing on it.
Yeah.
Um, and I know like this is another one of those back and forths of like you like it's this kind of bittersweet thing. Like mindfulness is as much as it's like supposed to be this solace and this practice of liberation, it's also difficult, because it's confronting a lot of stuff um, that that it feels like it's in the way. But it's I guess it goes back to the dishwashing analogy, right? There's a lot of dishes that need to be cleaned, and this is just like the first step in that process, and
Yeah.
having patience with kind of one dish at a time, and
Just do the big stuff.
yeah, yeah. And for me anyway, like don't worry about wasting so much water. Let that hot water run. Like I don't
I
want to
know.
have just like
Shh,
gross.
don't tell anybody.
I don't want this gross like water that's just sitting there like it was at the
Oh,
place that we stayed at for the yoga tune-up retreat where like we had to like use like that's
the buckets.
that's not my style. I don't like
No,
buckets.
it's not mine
Like
either.
it's just
Like,
dirty water eventually after
run,
one
baby,
dish.
run. Let that water run.
Yeah, let it run
So
so
fast.
good, steaming, stays. The bubbles never go stale. Like, oh god,
Oh, so true. Something I say to my students when, it like I'm getting the sense that's a little bit overwhelming. Like, think about your shoulders, do this and
yes,
do that
yes,
and do this and do that. And they're just like statically holding a pose. I'm like, listen, I ask you to think of all these things super in depth so that when you walk out this door, you don't have to think about
yeah,
turning on your core to stabilize your spine. You don't have to think about relaxing your shoulders so your traps stay out of it. That happens. That becomes second nature. Like this is the laboratory where you practice and you repeat and you practice and you repeat so that
yes,
that refined movement becomes the pattern.
yes. Right, that's a great way to put it. Like we're putting in the work now, so it's just another step in completing and outfitting that arsenal. Like it's there, it's ready, and that concept of habit formation, uh, continues to boggle my mind, and
It's all about them habits.
yeah, all about them habits. But then also is this piece of like, how can you develop the right habits that are then going to sort of like free you from, or free you to be able to like explore in a less orderly way. So if we like think about the Instagram post of Dewey Nielsen, and he's talking about that sort of like the myth of joint stacking in a sense,
Mm-hmm.
and how to like sort of know like what is that like, and I think like what is that process of doing the due diligence so that like now you can kind of explore some of the territories that are like more dangerous, right? It's like kind
Mm-hmm.
of like a martial artist, right? It's like for after your first class, like don't get into a street fight, but
Is
like
it Mortal Kombat?
yeah, but like eventually down the road it's like you know sort of like like there's a possibility that that may happen, and like and you are ready for that. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's like that's been sort of a very eye-opening piece to me with like Andre Ospina's work in functional range conditioning, and his concept of like you're always going to regret not having trained the place in which you got injured, you know
Yeah.
and this like it's something that like has been like this huge kind of like elephant in the room for me of like neutral spine, and like he's very much like talking a lot about kind of like the backlash of neutral spine, and it's like how like our spine is like made to articulate, and like all of a sudden like you know people are so neutral that like they're still having like lumbar disc issues because like there's
They're
just
stiff and neutral.
they're stiff and neutral. And and then of course are all the arguments about like most sports in life are not really necessarily happening in neutral like in
Yeah.
some capacity. And so, again, just that back and forth of like what role is the gym playing, and I think that context of it being this laboratory and how we need to create it, let it be more of a safe place to begin with,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then those progressions to allow things to open up a little bit more, versus a lot of the ways in which I think the gym acts like the only place where you can kind of let loose, And if
Yeah.
maybe that's the case, like then that's another highlight of like there's some other problems going on in the rest of your life, right? If like the gym is the only place like you feel like you can just let loose, like
Mm-hmm. We
then
need to have a bigger
yeah, we need
conversation.
to have a bigger conversation.
I may not be the best one to have. It's beyond my scope.
Yeah, right. This is
Uh,
yes. What is the scope of our time together?
Let me show you how to touch your toes.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, I have even recently discovered how stiff I am in spinal flexion.
Mm.
I default to extension, like that's where I'd rather hang out. And so
Mhm.
everything's constantly trying to bring myself back to neutral. And then I was working with a yoga tune-up teacher named Aaron Porter, who's here in LA. He's a Pilates teacher.
Yeah, I've seen his
So
name come up a lot.
Aaron Porter is awesome. And in Pilates, there's spinal extension, there's spinal flexion, there's a lot of rolling.
Uh-huh.
And I've never done it. And
Yeah,
well, I have, but I like totally forgot. And it was really hard. So I was like, oh, I mean, that was a light bulb moment for me is like, neutral is not enough. You need
Right.
to be able to do everything. You need to be able to do rotation and flexion and extension because, yeah, you're going to regret when you get injured that, like, shoot, that was the one thing I wish I had
Yeah.
practiced.
I really like. I've been trying to train more of like the full back bridge, as a way to work on global spinal extension,
Mm.
and that's just been great. Like,
Good.
I've been using. I'm not quite there yet, so like I'll use like a box to elevate my feet on, or
Oh.
I've seen. Like we have this, so like our gym is kind of split in two. There's like sort of like our side, and then there's like a Olympic weightlifting side.
Mm-hmm.
And then like on the Olympic weightlifting side, they have like kind of like a little small room that's got like extra like accessory weights in there. But
Mm-hmm.
what they have is like one of those what looks like a mini like wooden ladder essentially. And
Mm.
I think you see them in yoga studios sometimes. It may be like a Pilates thing. Um, but like that's great to work on the whole back bridge because then like there's like just naturally different levels I can put my feet on.
Right.
So
Right.
something I've been playing with is like I'll pick one level to start at and I'll kind of press into that position, and then in that position can I like actually step down a little bit, like step one
Oh.
foot down, step one foot up. And that's had like a whole different sort of like feeling with the hamstrings contracting too, like in
Yeah.
this like spinally and like as far as like balance and stuff, that gets a little crazy, as far as like something to
Ooh.
control, but yeah, just another piece of the puzzle,
Yeah.
really really key. And I think too often, right, especially in the gym space, because it's easier to uh, create movements around, like so much going into this plane of like the anterior chain,
Mm-hmm.
moving in towards itself versus the extension, and so continuing to find more ways, to get there.
Move.
Yeah,
Just move.
just move.
Move more. Move more. Move often. And eat your vegetables.
Yes. What veggies are you gonna have in your breakfast meal?
Oh, my breakfast meal. Well, I prepped because I'm, just finished Whole30, so I'm still about that meal prep. I sautéed some onions and apples with some ground turkey, and then I seasoned it up a la Melissa Juwan, I think is her name, of Well Fed. And then I'm going to throw some scrambled eggs in there and some spinach.
Nice.
And then I'm going to drink some coffee.
Do it.
And if my bananas are frozen, I might have a smoothie too, and then I won't be hungry till tomorrow.
Yeah, that sounds. I had one of those lunches yesterday where it was so much food I didn't even have dinner.
That's all right.
Yeah, that's how you roll. All right. So with that being said, we will close out. Do you want to end with one self-care piece you want to leave the audience with to explore?
Yes. So oftentimes people are like, well, what should I prioritize? What should I do? Honestly, set a timer for 5 minutes. Like 5 minutes is nothing when you think about it. And roll anything. Like just get we'll start there. I mean, it could be anything. We'll say just, get a therapy ball, preferably a yoga tune-up ball, and put it on something on your body and then move around. And once that timer goes up, you're done. And there's your self-care for the day.
Bam.
Which will help to reset your nervous system, your soft tissue scaffolding, and bam, you're ready to go.
Okay, here's mine. Next time you go see a movie, you are going to. Oh, that wasn't the self-care piece.
No, but I'm like so excited because I'm like, oh, what's it gonna say? What's it gonna say?
Yeah. But also go see a movie because that's a good self-care piece. But next time you go see a movie, you're gonna get there a little bit early, just in terms of just so you're not rushed and you don't have to like get the seat where you're like in cervical extension for 2 hours. And then once you're there early, right, you are going to couch stretch on that seat. You're gonna put that shin up against where your back would be against. That knee is gonna come down on the cushion that your butt would be on. You can just have the other foot on the ground, and you're gonna work on some hip extension and just embrace the fact that other people may be like, "What are you doing?"
Are you going to bring your therapy balls too, so you could roll during the movie?
Yes, I do that.
Yeah, me too.
You know what I found is it's hard sometimes, like with how cushiony the seats are, to like get the right pressure.
Yeah. Alpha ball
works well, but the other thing I've done is I blow up the Coregeous ball and I sit on the Coregeous ball. And
I thought I was so weird. You're like my weird twin. I love it.
And so I sit on the Coregeous ball, and that's a great way to prop you up, to put you into neutral better. You also get a little bit of that movement. It's like the mini version of sitting on a Swiss ball and doing work.
Does your girlfriend go to the movies with you anymore?
Yeah, it's always difficult, especially when she wants to me to hold her hand and like.
And you're like, babe, I got to mobilize.
Yeah, and like and then there's always like I'm couch stretching like before the preview start, and she's like, "Are you gonna sit down when the lights go off?" And it's hard, like I don't know. I'm just
there needs to be a support group for spouses of movement
that's
weirdos.
What I'm talking about. Like I'm interested in like these couples that sort of like like work together like in the same space. Like how that compares to us, where like we have significant others that exist in a little different sphere.
Yeah.
So
they keep us a little bit closer to the normal.
Yeah, that's true, and we need that. Like, we need to be reminded of
how weird we are.
Yeah, and where others are coming from, the cultural differences.
Yes,
and we are a culture in and of ourselves.
True that.
All right, without further ado, this is another episode of Behind the Podium. Thank you for listening. You can find more information at behindthepodiumpodcast.com.
Yep.
And our respective websites. I am at CP, P as in Peter, B as in Bob, growth.com. And Alex Ellis is at
aewellness.com, and I'm on social media where you should be while you're rolling or not, at Hala for Mala.
All right, thank you for listening, and we will talk to you next time.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to Behind the Podium, Unveiling the Coach. If you have enjoyed what you listened to, head over to iTunes and leave us a review. More information on each episode and the podcast in general can be found at behindthepodiumpodcast.com. We'll catch you next time.